I just got in a massive bulk lot of Lego minifigures. If you're interested in seeing me sort through the lot from the beginning, you should check out my previous video. But in this video, I'm going to be going by theme and getting all of these figures listed onto my Bricklink store so I can see how much profit I end up with. The lot cost me $500 for 11 pounds of figures, which was a fantastic deal. And in the lot, I found a lot of great figures. The 4 figures that you can see right here are some of the best ones that I went ahead and pulled out, and I'm going to list these first because these figures should honestly recoup the entire cost of the lot. But once I get these guys listed, I'm going to start working through the different themes, seeing which figures I can complete and how much I'm able to get for them. For starters, I have these 2 Possessed Lloyd minifigures. They're currently selling for close to $200 on Bricklink. Now, one of these is in great condition. The other one does have some very small hairline cracks. So I'm going to list my very good condition figure at $200, which I actually already had one in my store, also listed at $200. And then the one that has the hairline cracks, I'm going to knock that down $20 and list him at $180. Next up, we have Zeb. Now, this figure seems to go for around $80 to $125 based on condition. My version of this figure is in great shape, so I'm going to be listing him on the higher end of that. I'm going to list him at $125. The last of the valuable figures that I had pulled out is Nightwing. So this is a figure that has shot up in price recently. My figure is in excellent condition, and figures in good shape tend to go for around $60 to $70 at this point, it looks like. So I'm going to list him at $65. All right, so now that I've got those valuable figures listed, I'm already in the green on the lot, but I still have a ton of figures to get to, and for starters, I'm going to look through the Star Wars minifigures. So a lot of these are not assembled at the moment, so I'm going to go through and sort through these figures and see which ones I am able to complete. All right, so I've finished sorting through the Star Wars stuff. A lot of the Star Wars I'm actually going to be keeping for my own personal collection. This is mostly just like army builder figures like clone troopers and droids and rebels. Those are some figures that I like to just keep for myself. But there are a lot of figures that I was able to complete that I am going to be listing onto my Bricklink store. And then I also have a cup full of pieces that I'm going to check the value on. And if they're worth, at least a few dollars, I'll go ahead and add these to my store as well. But first up, I'm going to be working through getting all of the minifigures listed. I'm going to list some of the more valuable figures first, starting with this Pong Krell, and then I'll just kind of do a big batch through Brickstore for a lot of the less expensive figures. So Pong Krell, he seems to go for around $50 to $60 in good condition. I'm going to price mine in the middle of that at $55. Next up, we've got the Count Dooku from the Clone Wars. He does have a small crease running down the back of his cape, but otherwise he's in great condition. So I'm going to list him to my site for $25. Next up is Hera. She is also in very good condition. Looks like she sells for around $15 to $20, but since mine is in good condition, I'm going to list her at $20. Next, we have Indoor Leia, also in very good condition. She goes for upwards of $30, so that's right where I'm going to list her. Indoor Han Solo is also in very good condition. He goes for close to $15, so that's where I'm going to price him. Next, we have the Stormtrooper helmet variant of JONAK 14. My figure is in very good condition. It looks like this figure can go for as low as $40, but a lot of people have them listed closer to $50, so that's where I'm going to price mine. From the same set as JONAK 14 is this Ithorian Jedi Master. He's in very good condition and can go for close to $30 to $35. I'm going to put mine at $35. Next up, we've got Evan Peel. He had some light scratches on the back, which I will note in the listing, but otherwise he's in good shape, and I'm going to list him at $25. Next, we have the Supreme Leader version of Kylo Ren. He is also in very good condition, and in the US, he seems to go for $15 to $20. Again, I'm going to price on the higher range of that at $20. Next is Kanan Jarrus, also in good condition. Fortunately, a lot of these Star Wars figures have been in good shape. He goes for $15 to $20, it looks like. I'm going to price him right at $20. So just by listing those 10 figures, I've already added, a few $100s worth of inventory to the store. Now with these less expensive figures, I'm going to do one big batch through Brickstore and see what they total out to be. All right, so I finished going through the completed Star Wars figures. I've got them all loaded up into a brick store file. As you can see up here, I have 34 total figures, 31 different figures, and they are worth a total of $336. So now I'm just going to go ahead and upload this file into my Bricklink store. All right, here we have the file input into the Bricklink upload, and all those figures that I uploaded into Brickstore are now here. As you can see, I've marked the condition of each one. Fortunately, a lot of these figures were in good condition, but any of the ones that had some damage, I noted that, and now we're ready to upload the file. So after getting all of these Star Wars figures listed, that added a total of about $650 in value. When you add that with those valuable figures that I listed originally, I've already pretty much doubled the cost of the lot, and this is just the beginning. Again, I do have this cup full of pieces. I'm going to end up with several, cups like that from each of the different themes that I go through, where I take some pieces from some of the incomplete figures, and then I'll, check the prices on Bricklink to see if they're worth adding as individual items. But the next theme that I'm going to work on is going to be Ninjago. All right, so now that I've got the Star Wars figures listed, here we have Ninjago. There was, quite a bit of both Ninjago and Star Wars in this lot, which is great because, those are two of the themes which will have some of the more valuable figures, particularly a lot of these older Ninjago figures that, kind of released from before that Ninjago movie. One good one is the Lloyd Skybound. I had a Lloyd Final Battle. This guy, which I still cannot remember the name for, like Scalador or something like that. We had 3 KDX figures, although unfortunately all of those, had some sort of playware, so they're not going to be worth, the full amount. I got Zainier, Jitsu, several more here. I'm going to go ahead and sort through this and see what I have, and then I'll get back with you in a minute. All right, so I've sorted through all the Ninjago. Now, a bunch of these were incomplete, unfortunately, but I did complete probably like 15 or 20 figures here. And it's not really that big of a deal to have all those incomplete figures. I've got those pieces set aside, and I've actually got a bunch of other like partial Ninjago figures already on hand. So I'll just like throw those pieces in there so I can try to work on completing some of those figures over time. But besides that, I'm going to go ahead and start listing these. Now, with the Ninjago, a lot of the older stuff has gone up in value quite a bit lately. So I'm gonna look at the price guide for each of these figures individually to see what the best way to price them out is. So this is the Silver Horn Demon from Monkey Kid apparently, and the cheapest available in the US that is not damaged is $67. I'm gonna list mine at 65, and we'll see how it does. But that was very unexpected to come across in this this lot. Next up, we've got these 2 figures from Skybound. Both of these are in very good condition. Flintlock is one that is only worth like a few dollars. I'm gonna list him at 5, which is a little bit higher than average, but I don't mind listing him, on the higher end of things, just even if it takes, a bit longer to sell. Lloyd, the cheapest one available in the US right now, is $30. Now, I actually already have 2 copies of this figure listed at $30, but now I will have a third one available in that same listing. Next up, we have a couple figures from Rebooted. So we've got a Ninjoid Warrior, and then we also have Lloyd in his Techno Robe. The Ninjoid Warrior is another figure that sells for just a few dollars, but I am going to list him at 5. And then with Lloyd, his average sold price is only $6, but a lot of the US copies of this figure have already sold, and it seems like he's around $15 to $20 at the cheapest in the US, so I'm going to go ahead and list my copy at $20. Here we have Pixel, who's also from Rebooted. Now this one unfortunately does have like a few little dents on the front and back of her torso, so I am going to knock her price down a little bit. The average sold price for her is $15, and I'm just going to price it right at there. Next up, we've got Scalador from The Rise of the Snakes. This figure kind of varies a lot in price. It seems like he kind of goes anywhere between like $20 and $30. Now, fortunately, mine is in good condition, so I'm going to price him on the high end of that, right at $30. Here we have Lloyd from the Final Battle. This one is selling for around $20 to $25, it looks like, so I'm going to price mine right at $25. Next, we have Kai from Final Battle. Now, fortunately, this figure is in very good condition. A lot of the Kai Final Battles that I have found have been in pretty rough shape. He varies anywhere between like $5 to $25 as far as like current listings go on Bricklink, but he is available new as little as $20, so I'm actually going to price mine at $15. Here we have the golden version of Lloyd from the Final Battle. Now, this figure varies a lot. In February, he has sold for as little as $5 and as much as $45. It seems like the price, has probably gone to around $20 to $25 for the good condition copies of this figure. So I'm going to price mine at $25. Next up, we've got Kai in his deep stone armor from the Possession Wave. This figure is roughly in the $15 to $20 range, it looks like. I actually already have a few copies of this figure listed and available at $20 though, so I'm just going to add this to that listing. Here we've got two of the different Possession Ghosts, one of them with the scabbard and one of them without. These are also some figures that I already have listed on my store at $6 and $6.50, so I'm just going to add these to those listings. Here we have Jay from the Tournament of Elements. Now, this figure on average has only sold for like $3 in the past, but currently in the US, the cheapest available copy is $25. So I'm going to match that price and list mine for $25. Here we have Crate from the Tournament of Elements. This is another one of those villains that is not worth that much, but he is worth a few dollars, and I'm going to list mine at $5, which is a little bit above average. So last up, for those Ninjago figures that I was able to complete, we have the J from Legacy. This is another figure that's only worth, around $3 or so, but I'm going to list my copy at $5. That is going to do it for all of the Ninjago figures. That added, about $300 or so to the total, which is pretty good. And I would personally probably value all these extra parts at around a conservative estimate, I'd say, is around $100. They're probably worth more, in all honesty, because I've got some really good pieces in here. There are a couple of the old Zane hairs, which are going for like $10 to $20 now. The white Zane hood is worth like $10 now. So there are a lot of good pieces that I'll be able to use to complete some other figures, and I'm going to, value this stuff at about $100. Next up, I'm going to be looking at the CMFs. So with these other themes that I have, I'm not going to, sort them quite as in-depth as I have with the Star Wars and Ninjago, just because the average value of the figures is not going to be as high, so I don't want to spend as much time with them. But I am definitely going to pick through and find any of the figures that I'm able to complete, like this Medusa, who I know is worth, somewhere around $20. All right, so I was actually able to complete quite a few of these CMFs, and I also have, a bunch of parts left over. Those parts are some that I'm going to look through at the end to see if there's any value there, because I do know that, a lot of the CMF like accessories, and some of them will have like unique pieces that are worth, a few bucks. So I will check that. But I was able to complete a bunch of these figures. The space figures that you see right here are actually some that I'm going to be just keeping for my own collection. I really like the, the dark blue Space Marines that they did, and they have, a few other cool alien figures and such. Actually found a Zane DX torso hiding under this guy's armor, so that was pretty cool. But regardless, I'm gonna go ahead and get these added. I think Medusa is the most valuable, so I'm gonna add her first, but then the rest of them I'll just do through one big brick store file. So Medusa looks like she can go for anywhere around $20 to $30. Mine is in very good condition, except for the tail does have like, a few small markings on it. So I went ahead and priced her kind of in the middle of that at $25. And again, for the rest of these, I'm just going to go through and do one big file and upload them all at once. All right, so I had to grab another base plate because I filled up that first one, but I've gotten all of those CMFs listed now. So first we had the Medusa, and then I've uploaded all of the figures into this file. There were a total of 15 figures, 14 different ones. And as you can see, the total works out to $91.50. So now I'm just going to export this Brickstore file into my Bricklink store. All right, so we've got the file pasted. Here we go. As you can see, we've got all these different figures and their prices all loaded up and ready to be added into the store. And that is another $91 towards this now. Next up, we have the superheroes. Kind of like the CMFs, this is one where I'm not going to sort it quite as in depth as I have the Star Wars and Ninjago. But I am going to pick out any of the complete figures in here that I can find, as well as any individual parts that I think might be worth adding into the store on their own. All right, so I finished sorting out all of the superheroes here. I don't think that very many of these are very valuable. The Iron Fist is worth, you know, a decent bit, but a lot of these are pretty cheap, especially all these like Spider-Man. But in addition to the complete figures, I do have a whole bunch of just miscellaneous, you know, superhero pieces. So I am going to check the prices on those in a bit and see if they're worth anything. But for the moment, I'm just going to go ahead and get all of these figures listed. All right, so I've gotten all of the superhero figures listed into this Brickstore file. Unfortunately, a lot of the Spider-Man figures were in pretty bad shape, but they're not very expensive figures anyways, so I didn't bother listing them and, you know, describing all the damage. But with the figures that I did have, it comes out to $119.50. Just going to upload this file into my Bricklink store. And here we go. So I actually already had one of those Lokis, so that's going to be combined with an older lot, but all these other figures are new. And I had actually priced the Loki, looks like $1 higher than the original lot, so I'm actually going to have this at $118.50 for these figures that I'm adding right here. Here we have all of the random licensed figures, so I'm going to sort these out, and again, just kind of pick through any of the ones I can find to be complete. A lot of these are probably not complete, but I should end up, you know, with a decent amount. Some of these Harry Potter figures I know are complete. All right, so I actually ended up completing a lot more of the licensed figures than I had thought. There's a whole bunch of the Harry Potter, which really isn't worth that much in general, but as long as they're in good condition, they'll still be worth putting up on the site. None of these figures are like too crazy, but there are like a few decent ones in here. I know that this Indiana Jones suit is worth a decent bit, but gonna go ahead and get all of these loaded up into a Brickstore file. All right, so I've gotten all of these licensed figures listed. I ended up having, you know, a lot more than I expected. Some of these SpongeBob figures were actually in really good shape, which is pretty rare. A lot of these SpongeBob figures that I come across are pretty beat up usually. Some of these Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are also worth a decent bit. Most of that Harry Potter stuff, unfortunately, is pretty cheap, but I have them all loaded up inside of this file. And as you can see here, the total comes out to 57 figures and a total of $362. All right, and here I have the file input into Bricklink. And here we go. So we've got all of these new figures. Oh, looks like I did have one of the Hagrids already listed. We've got all these figures getting added into the store. And the total is going to be $361 with the Hagrid price change. Next up, here we have a bunch of figures from just like miscellaneous Lego original themes like Chima. There's some like Space Police in here, Atlantis, we got Alien Defense Unit. A lot of these are not worth a ton of money. I'm gonna go ahead and look through them and check some prices to see if any of the complete figures are worth listing. But some of the like Chima figures are just like really cheap, and I'll probably just end up throwing those on eBay as an auction to just get whatever I can out of them. So most of those figures were either like incomplete, damaged, or only worth $1 or $2. And for me, it's not really worth, you know, the time to like check for condition and list figures individually if they're only going to sell for $1 or $2. So those are some figures that I'll just like probably throw into an eBay listing. I did have these 6 figures, which were worth, you know, at least a few dollars though. So I am going to go ahead and get these listed into the Bricklink store. The Macy figure from Nexo Knights ended up needing a hairpiece that I did not have. So I did not add her, but I got those other figures added, and that is another $28 going into the store. Last up, we have the bin of all the vintage pieces. Now, any of the like castle or ninja figures from these, I'll probably just be keeping for myself because I do like to collect those. Like here we have a Lion Knight. But I think there might be a couple decent pirate figures in here, so I'm going to go ahead and look through and see what I can find. So most of those older figures were either incomplete or damaged, but I was able to piece together a few pretty nice pirate figures that I will be adding shortly. I did also pull out a few decent individual pieces that are worth, you know, at least a few dollars on their own. And in addition to the stuff that I'm selling, I pulled out a bunch of old castle and ninja stuff. So this is some stuff that I'll be keeping for my own personal collection. You know, I value it, you know, pretty decently, but I'm not going to count it towards the profit. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get those figures listed. Those will be the last of the individual figures that I list into my Bricklink store. But then I'm going to be working on adding all the individual pieces. I've picked out some of the more expensive pieces from each theme, and also had a bunch of like incomplete Lord of the Rings stuff too. So there's going to be a pretty good value from all the individual pieces as well. But first up, let me get these guys added in and we'll see what the total is at. All right, nothing too crazy, but I got those 4 figures listed, and that's another $25 from this lot. One last thing that I forgot before I start adding those individual pieces is all of these city figures. So these are not really worth the time to list individually on Bricklink, but I can just kind of throw random figures together, and I'll usually get around $1 a figure for these on eBay. So what I'm going to do is go through and just give every single one of these figures, you know, a head and headgear that kind of matches their torso, so it works, and then I'll just throw them into random eBay lots at some point. All right, so here we have my giant mound of city figures. All in all, I counted 184 right here, and I can usually get about $1 a piece for these on eBay, so I'm going to value that at $184. Here we have all of the individual figure pieces that I'm going to go through and check whether or not they're worth listing on their own. For my Bricklink store, I prefer to keep it to rarer and more expensive pieces, just because for me, it's not really worth the time to like list and sell like the little 50-cent minifigure parts. But any of these that are on the higher end, so at least, you know, a few dollars or so, I will go ahead and get listed into the store individually. I've got all of these inventory bins that I use for my custom business as well, but it helps to have that organized inventory system for when I'm listing stuff to Bricklink too. The Atlantis guy, I thought I was going to be able to sell for like 50 bucks, but unfortunately he is glued to the base, but his claws alone are where most of the value is. So I'll still be able to get like 30 or 40 bucks for these two. So that's nice. We got some Star Wars pieces, a few like older classic pieces in here. And then we've got all the incomplete CMFs, superheroes, and licensed figures, where I'm just going to go and check whether or not they're worth listing. So I have finished price checking all of these pieces, and the ones that you see here are the ones that were worth adding to the store. So currently I've uploaded these as stockroom items to my Bricklink store, which means they aren't live yet. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add them to the drawers, and then I'll go in on the back end and give them all inventory locations before making them live on the site. Here we go. I've got all of the items now live on the site. So there ended up being close to 200 total pieces that I added here for a total value of $1,054. So with all of those pieces being added, the total profit for this lot is now up and over $3,000. For a $500 lot of minifigures, this has definitely been, you know, a great deal. I've added quite a bit of inventory to my Bricklink store, as well as, you know, those miscellaneous parts that'll get thrown up on eBay. Here we have just some leftover bits that aren't even listed yet. So these are some pieces that'll just either be assimilated into my own collection or maybe just sold at a later date. You know, I have a whole cup full of headgear here, a bunch of headgear accessories. We've got a bunch of hairs in here. Some leftover heads, mostly like city stuff in here. I had separated out like any licensed heads. Here are some blank heads in a few different colors. We got some random leftover torsos and legs. Here we have bins with leftover parts from several themes. So these are all the licensed figure parts. These are all of the leftover CMF parts. These are all of the leftover superheroes parts. These are all of the leftover miscellaneous, like original theme parts. And these are all the leftover classic parts. So with all those bins of leftover pieces, a lot of them will get sold just in random eBay lots. Some of the classic stuff I will like set aside and try to piece together some more figures for. But with a lot of the licensed and like CMFs, I picked out any of the more valuable pieces, and so the rest I'll just sell as one big random lot. I also have this whole bin of different like bodywear. So we got some capes and different accessories in here. A lot of cool pieces there. And in addition to the stuff that I'm selling, this is all the stuff that I picked out to keep for myself. So I have a whole cup full of different castle pieces. There was not like a ton of castle in this lot, but any of that castle stuff is stuff that I want to be keeping. Here we have some different space figures, mostly from the CMFs, but also some like Galaxy Squad guys too. I love these guys. And then we have quite a bit of Star Wars in here. So a lot of just like clones, rebels, droids, some Mandalorians, all sorts of stuff. I mean, probably several $100s worth of figures just right here. You know, I'm not counting it towards the profit of the lot, but it is, you know, a bunch of great stuff that I will just be keeping for my own collection. We have some leftover like Star Wars accessories that I pulled out. We have a few partial figures I was going to try to complete for Bricklink later. Some like droid pieces here. Here we have a few different Lego Movie bits. It looks like a couple of these figures actually are complete, but I had never gotten them listed. They're not worth a ton of money though, so I will probably just end up throwing them onto eBay. Here are a few animals that I pulled out of the lot. We've got some accessories here. I pulled out all the like medieval weapons because those are some accessories that I definitely want to keep. This is just kind of like random miscellaneous accessories too. All in all, you know, quite a bit of stuff here. A lot of inventory that's been added, a lot of stuff that's going to be kept, and a lot of stuff that I'm still going to sell. But regardless, it was, you know, a great deal. And that is going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching.